You're listening to the Poo Podcast. My name is Dosta. Here we discuss all things poo. Please do subscribe and comment. And now I present to you episode 3 from season 1 on the Poo Podcast. So this story didn't actually happen to me. It happened to a friend of mine, or we could say someone I admire. And they told this story to me when we were sharing stories of a poo nature. We were sharing poo stories around the table one time at dinner or lunch, I forget which. And this friend of mine, she's really something. She's really quite an incredible person, and I was wondering of how I'm going to explain this person to you for this particular story, and I realised the best image I can come up with is that she's a cross between Pocahontas and Lucy Liu. Now, Pocahontas, free spirit, fictional character, embodies a lot of the divine feminine that is so nicely portrayed by Disney. And, well, she's Native American. She's in touch with her spirituality, her nature, the ways of the world, Gaia, what it means to live in the rivers, in the rocks, in the trees, by the mountains, by the sea. And if you take half of that and you combine it with Lucy Liu, well, who is Lucy Liu? Well, probably most famously, Lucy Liu is the actor who was in Kill Bill as one of the villains that killed Uma Thurman, or tried to kill Uma Thurman. And she had the head gang of the Crazy 88s, and she ended up having this epic samurai sword fight with Uma Thurman. And really, Lucy Liu is that badass Asian woman. She is just kick-ass, strong, clear. Don't mess with her. She really knows what's happening. And of course, there's many roles that she's played. There's many movies that she's been in. She's quite an accomplished actor. Really an A-list actor in so many ways. And I'm honestly, I just have to tell you, I'm quite attracted to Lucy Liu. There's just something about her which I think is quite gorgeous. So this friend of mine, if you just imagine like half Pocahontas, half Lucy Liu. And her story is that, well, she was out in the bush and nature called, as it does. She had to do a poo. And, well, she went and she did it and found herself in that awkward situation, which is where you're not sure if it's entirely out or if it's still dangling or if there's something more to come, or you're not really sure, right? You know, it's like when you're doing a poo and it's one that doesn't just come straight out and plop, then you can have that moment where you're reaching the decision of, well, should I push more? And it's not as though you exactly want to check, because if you go and reach your hand around your asshole, then you're going to actually touch something that might be dangling. And even if it's not dangling, well, you don't want to get too close to your asshole right when you've done a poo anyway. And of course, my friend had the problem that she was in nature, so she didn't have a good plopping sound, right? Because a lot of the time you can gauge whether you are at what stage of your poo by the plopping sound, and the health of the poo is done by a nice plop. But when you're going into a hole or just straight onto dirt, then, well, you don't have the plop advantage. And she said that she got into this position where she was sort of halfway through squatting and unsure about whether it was all the way out or not. And she sort of paused for a moment, feeling like it was a dangling poo and she needed to shake it off. So she thought, okay, well, I'll shake it, and if it plops, then it will go off. So she wiggled her butt a little bit, but it didn't come out. But then she could realize, well, actually it is hanging. So she thought, oh, my poo is hanging from my butt, and shaking it is not enough to wiggle it out. So she thought, well, there's no choice left but to reach around and pull it out. And as she moved her hand around to her butthole to get off that dangling poo, she realized that it wasn't a poo that was coming from her bum. It was actually a giant feral cockroach. And what had happened was, this cockroach in this jungle was so aggressive that it had run up to her butt and latched onto her asshole to try and get the fresh poo. And of course, she did manage to pull it off. She did manage to get it out. And she said, well, she felt quite miserable about that situation. But, of course, as a listener to the story, me and my friends and all those who were present for the recanting of this story were very much entertained, and we were very much, in some ways, enlightened by, well, the ways of the jungle and the ways of this woman who is half Pocahontas and half Lucy Liu. I think that just about does it for this episode, so thanks very much for tuning in. This has been the Poo Podcast. We will be back very soon with more, so stay tuned. Bye for now.